Good afternoon, Marine. Tell me your name and where you're from.
My name is John Wetter. Hail from southwestern Colorado. I joined the Marine Corps 3 days out of high school in 1960. Attended boot camp at San Diego with an all-state platoon from Colorado. First job I had in the Marine Corps, I got into communications, put in field radio operator in a artillery battery, Delta Battery, 2nd Battalion, 11th Marines. And I did that for about 2 years. I was also qualified as a forward observer. And then in 1962, I extended to go to the longest school the Marine Corps had, longest technical school. And that turned out to be, had no idea what it was, but it turned out to be avionics, or aviation electronics, avionics. Spent a year going to school, communications navigation, fire control systems, and electronic countermeasures and countermeasures. Following that, I was assigned to HMM 263 in New River, North Carolina. I re-enlisted in 1964 for 4 years, and I got $700 for that. My re-enlistment option was to be transferred to El Toro so I could marry this young lady I was sweet on. So I was transferred and was in a F-8 Crusader Squadron, the MFAW 312. Wife and I were married in 1964. We have 4 children, 10 grandchildren, 1 great-grandchild. And after, on my first tour in Vietnam, I was with 312, and we were at Da Nang. At that time, they only had 1 runway. We were set up on one of the the extended runway that wasn't completed yet, and right across the field from Ranch Hand. Those were the guys that had the Agent Orange they were spraying. And one advantage to being there, we had no growth of anything whatsoever around us. The only thing we had was a lot of orange dust that we had to spit out continuously. I don't know how many guys have cancer, but I imagine there's a few.
What was your job?
I was, at that time I had the night crew on the avionics. I was night crew for avionics. We used to arrive at about 6 o'clock in the evening and work our problems off on the aircraft till midnight. Then from midnight to first launch, we would load ordnance. And our ordnance people were full up, occupied on the 20-millimeter cannons on the aircraft. Each one had 4. And so they didn't have time to load bombs, so we did that, the avionics crew. While I was in 312, I was recommended for a meritorious NCO program. I applied for it. I returned to the States in early '66, was signed to a helicopter group at LTA. That used to be LTA, then it was the Marine Corps Air Facility, Santa Ana, then the Marine Corps Air Station. And while I was, I think it was in June of '66, I was blessed with one of those weeks that was. They used to have a program, that was the week that was. Well, my week that was, on a Tuesday, I found out from Navy Times I was selected for Staff Sergeant. On Wednesday, I found out I was selected for the Meritorious NCO program. And on Friday, I was told I was selected for the temporary commissioning program, which I declined that one because I thought if I was going to get a commission, I wanted to keep it. I didn't want to turn it in. So then in August of '66, I went to OCS, graduated in October and was commissioned in October, basic school. We had a fairly large class. And then from there, after basic school, I was assigned to MASS-3 up at El Toro. And we were trained and qualified in the DASC and the ASRAT, the TPQ-10. And then about a year or two later, I was sent off to Air Traffic Control Officers course in Glencoe, Georgia. And I completed that, came back, took over an air traffic control unit, and then in 1970, June of 70, I was sent back overseas again, and I was with sent to MASS-3.
When did you serve in MASS-3?
In June of 1960, I was posted from MATQ 74 to Westpac. I ended up in MASS-3. I was up on Hill 327. Jerry Gurman was the OIC of the ASRAT. He requalified me and certified me on TPQ-10 operations. And then at the end of June, I was assigned down to ANWA ASRAT, where I took over the ASRAT down there. 5th Marines had the fire support base, and so I was OIC there. Late July, early August, 5th Marines pulled out of ANWA, so we retrograded the equipment back up to Da Nang, and then I went back and I was assigned to the desk. Bob Gibson was the OIC at the time. With me as controller was Lynn Welchel. I served in the desk until I think the end of November. Early November, the Group CO also put me as the OIC of Da Nang ASRAT, so I had that. And at the same time, I was standing watch down at the desk. Then the end of that was until the end of November. They got some people in the desk to take that position, and then I was assigned as the assistant ops officer. John Fox was the operations officer, and I served in a number of primarily as whatever John wanted me to do as assistant opso. Usually took care of all the reports and all kinds of stuff like that. And I also pinch hitted for as a controller for the various ASRATs. Birmingham, I was up there briefly while Denny Del Maro was on R&R. And then during Lamson 719, I was up with Bud Kirkland. He was OIC of Quezon ASRAT. I served there for, I guess I was up there for, I don't know, 2 months. I can't remember.
Well, let me interrupt you to say, what did you like about your service with MASS-3?
The best part of it was working in the desk. That was the most rewarding. Yes, controlling was interesting. I had a couple of things happen during that time that stuck out. As I mentioned before, I was assigned to MASS-3. I was OIC of an air traffic control unit, and I was qualified and certified as a ground control approach controller. And one evening when I was down at ANWA, we had 3 emergencies over at Liberty Bridge. Liberty Bridge was not too far from ANWA, and it was on the south side of the bridge. They had 3 young Marines that were hurt pretty bad, and they needed to get them back up to Da Nang. They couldn't get any helicopters in because the cloud cover was such that the bottoms were at about 200 to 300 feet, I think it was. So having come from the MATQ and having done GCAs, I said, well, I have a radar and I have radios. Give me a helicopter, 46, and I can bring him in on what we would call a surveillance approach. And so they got an aircraft up there. He couldn't see anything because it was in the clouds. And so I brought him in, started him at 5 miles, the standard 3-degree glide path. And I told him how close he was, and I kept him on azimuth and give him corrections for azimuth, and then told him at each mile marker how high he should be. He takes beginning a 3-degree glide slope. He also knew that, but I told him exactly where he was because we were locked up on him. And at about 1 mile, I told him you should be at 300 feet, and he said, I just broke out of the clouds. I'm about 40 feet to the left of the landing zone. So he picked him up, took him off, And I found out later that all three did survive. One of them was hurt pretty bad.
I think I'm going to have to interrupt you and tell you thank you for your stories and the information, and we're very glad to hear it for posterity. Thank you.